Hello. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm just going to submit some of our guests. Let's see. Hello.
Hi there. Oh,
Hi, how are you? Hi.
Hey there.
yay.
Just waiting for our last guest to join, and then we can get started. But thank you, everyone, for coming in.
They started construction right over my head in the building, so of course that's how life goes.
Oh,
Hopefully
no.
it's not too loud.
We can hear you good now, so that's
Okay,
good.
perfect.
Where are you located?
I'm in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Oh, wow. It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
How about you, Melanie?
I am outside of DC. I'm in a suburb in Maryland. So
Oh, okay.
Where are you? My daughter's in Silver Spring. Where are you?
I'm in Germantown. So
Oh,
I'm
okay.
north of her. But yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. It looks like Catalina might be a little bit late. So while we're waiting for her, I can just tell our followers a little bit about Fairy Godboss and what we're doing here today. So I am Cassie Lombardi. I'm the social media manager here at Fairy Godboss. And for those of you who have not heard of our platform or what we do, we're the largest career community for women, and our mission is really to help women achieve their career goals. A big part of that, oh, I think I see Catalina's request. So let me get her in here. Perfect. She should be joining. So our mission is really to help women achieve their career goals, and a big part of that. Hi, Catalina.
I heard you up here.
There's always some issues with these video chats, but it's okay. So a big part of our mission is really, empowering women, supporting them, and that's why we started our VIP program. So I'm joined here today by three of our Fairygodboss VIPs. And our VIPs are, career experts, HR gurus, really advice givers, and more. And they really help support and empower our community. So I would love each of you to introduce yourselves. Do you want to start, Melanie?
Sure. Hi, my name is Melanie. I am a career and a life coach. I was a recruiter for 18 years. I personally pivoted myself in 2017 and went on my own career journey, which is really what kind of started to spark me to go into coaching full time. So I take everything that I was learning as a recruiter, working with both clients as well as candidates, and understanding the hiring process and allowing my clients to understand how to work with recruiters, how to navigate the job search process, and also remain. I'm very focused on goals and mindset, because the thing about the job search process is it's frustrating and often you feel alone. But thank you so much for having me here today.
No, thank you for being here. Pat, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Sure. My name is Pat Roquet. They call me the Rockstar Career and Leadership Strategist, and my handle here is Rock On Success. My gift is helping people fall in love with their job and their job to love them back. So I've had my company for 33 years. I started when I was in diapers, and a lot of background in public relations, strategic selling, anything to connect the people with their ideal right fit client, right fit employees. And so now the important part is helping people find where they are in organizations to stop the great resignation. So help them with finding that right fit organization, how to keep them engaged and keep them happy so that we can all drive the greatest impact. And I appreciate being here. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the work you're doing. Catalina, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Catalina Peña, and I am a mindful career coach, similar to, I believe, I forgot her name. So, Melissa?
Melanie. All
I
good.
I was a recruiter for a few years in tech. So I worked for a lot of different big companies, and I saw that there's just a really, really big issue with a lot of candidates, BIPOC and underrepresented candidates coming in. They weren't prepared. So what I do is I help organizations help the individuals serve in the BIPOC underrepresented communities to really up their game, understand how the game works, so they can make the game work for them, right? Because a lot of the times, like, people go into a job search being like, okay, well, I have to do everything perfect, but at the same time, they are also supposed to give you something back. And so really helping people figure out their own power, really shift their mindset, really help them really own their career journey. What I'm about.
I love that. Well, thank you so much all for being here today. This will be the first of hopefully many Firesides with Fairy Godboss where we chat with select VIPs about certain topics trending in the feed. So for today, we're actually going to talk about the hybrid workplace and specifically how we as women can continue to remain visible and advocate for ourselves no matter where we're working from. So for all of you tuning in, feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I'll be looking at those. But I do have a few questions ready for our experts here so we can dive right in. So let's start with the hybrid workspace. Generally, what do you think will make them successful moving forward? Because this is new territory for so many companies. Catalina, do you want to start?
Sure. I think what will make them successful is really communication. You really have to understand what the company needs and also what the individuals need, because now we're coming up on a year and a half of people working remotely, having freedom that in the office is just not possible. And so for companies that are trying hybrid workspace, they need to establish their rules, and the individuals need to establish their boundaries and rules as well, so they can come up with a solution that works for each team and each individual. And there are certain individuals that are going to need different things, but I think if it's like a general thing and maybe one-offs for maybe parents or people who really need that extra flexibility time off, I think it's all about just having those open lines of communication and not being afraid to fail. You're not going to get it right the first time, whether you're the company or the individual. Like, something's going to happen, things are going to mess up, and having that grace so that people actually can get over those humps when you're just beginning.
That's great. And Pat and Melanie, feel free to jump in. I want this to be a free conversation.
This is Pat. I'll jump in. As you can see, I definitely live a laptop life. I am a digital nomad, and I've been working remotely for 33 years. And so I did my master's thesis on best practices for virtual teams for the employees and their organizations in spring 2001, before 9/11. Before the towers fell in my community, I lived up in northern New Jersey, right outside. So we watched the towers fall and burn and smoke and lost friends and neighbors, and basically had to help companies quickly regroup, restructure where there were no buildings. Transportation systems were down. People lost their homes. It was literally like get out with basically no wallet, no purse, nothing. And so I can tell you that this is all not actually new. It's new to many people today, but my daughter's a doctor at Hopkins in Maryland and has nothing to do with this business at all, and said to me, Mom, you were built for this pandemic because you've been helping individuals stay calm and collected and organized through this for 20 years, way before now. So what would I think? Clarity on goals and purpose, right? So we're all working toward the right things at the right time together. Confidence that you can do it, and making sure you've got the tools and the ability, right, to perform your best. Communication, as you just mentioned, so I love that. And I'll mention the cadence about communication, right? Not over communicating, not staying on Zoom. There's no award for dying on Zoom. It really is about how does a company set boundaries of these are the times where we should be communicating as a group or be available. And these are the times when you can do your private work and get your stuff done, or what radical flexibility, as Gartner called it. So it's clarity, it's confidence, it's communicating, it's making sure you stay connected, and then finally celebrating your little wins. So not new, but we need to learn from what we've seen and go forward with optimism as best we can. Melanie, what about you?
Yeah, I think the one thing too, just kind of an offshoot of that, I think is establishing, make sure you're establishing really strong boundaries, knowing when to cut yourself off. And I know this isn't, you might think like, how does that help me show up? Because the key about working from home is you can go down a rabbit hole really quickly of working too much and not being able to and walk away from the computer. On top of that, we know that women in particular have been hit really hard with this pandemic. They're often the ones that are placed with having still the kids at home, taking care of them. You've got that happening over here, and then you've got your job. So you're juggling a lot, and not being afraid to set those boundaries, because you don't want to burn out. You don't want to burn out for yourself. You don't want to burn out for your family, and you don't want to burn out for your job, so that you're not showing up. So I definitely think that that's also a key too, is making sure that you establish what those boundaries are. And again, to all of their points, communicating, I think communication is the key to that. So.
And kind of leading off of that discussion of burnout, what do you think are some other challenges that everyone should prepare for? And do you think they're going to be different for managers and employers versus employees?
Mm.
Anyone who wants to go. Melanie, you can start.
Yes. I do think that I think now there's going to be more of an onus on the managers to really step up and really be, they're going to have to really be there for their employees right now. You're not going to, because I think one of the things that is probably different is there's a lot of managers out there that maybe have never had to manage remotely. And so that's a new skill set. That's something you're going to have to learn to adapt. You maybe aren't going to get it right the first for a little bit, but you are going to have to, you need to lean on your management team to make sure that you have the right resources and the right, and know how to manage, communicate with your employees, especially find out how they need to be managed remotely may be very different than how they were when they were in the office. So I do think that there's a little bit more extra pressure on the managers right now.
Melanie, that's so true. And if I can add to it, what I'm getting calls often from organizations all over the globe and of all different sizes, and many have had layoffs or people resigning. They're calling it the Great Resignation. Economists are saying that women in the workforce have dropped back basically to gains we made in 1987, which
Yeah.
is so sad. So we work so hard to climb the corporate ladder, and many have decided they've either fallen off by choice or by chance, or jumped off, or they've found their purpose and said, I'm different now and I'm not going back. But what that leaves is a large gap, because there are folks that in that invisible middle, they call it, who were not really trained to lead others. They may have been talented individual performers, and they are suddenly thrust into the responsibility of leading others. And so we hear things about, how do I go from buddy to boss? Because, right, Cassie, you and I were lunch buddies, and now you're my boss telling me what to do. Seriously? You get the sass of that, or
Yeah.
you get the, it's not about being a director giving directions. It's about using more of a coaching mentality to inspire people to be better. So not just giving them the band-aids, but teaching them, right? Don't give them the fish, teach them how. So there's a lot of those learning gaps that we're finding. People don't know what they don't know. And so the executives have long had richer budgets and executive coaching support and many of the other nice attention professional development pieces. But those mid managers or aspiring managers are now suddenly having to perform in places that they're completely like a fish out of water. They have not been trained. That doesn't stop them from having to produce in their own role, as well as now lead other people, compounding their sandwich generation responsibility. So we have a lot on our plates as women, as sandwich generation quarterback for family health decision making, and just keeping our own heads above water. It's a lot on our plates, and God bless all of us, because we've got to keep smiling and keep trudging ahead no matter what.
Mm-hmm. I love what y'all said, because it's absolutely true, especially what you were saying, Pat, about training. A lot of people aren't trained, right? Especially as managers, but also who are an ideal contributor, right? Sometimes you don't have the confidence to actually ask for what you need. That's something that we see a lot with women. That's something that we see a lot with BIPOC people in general across the workplace. And so it's really finding that confidence to ask your manager and say, I can only come in these days because these other 2 days I have gotten used to the flexibility of, working from home, right? And having that conversation can feel super scary, but it's very necessary that people find their voice, because if people don't find their voice, guess what? Companies are going to be like, oh, they don't care, and they're going to steamroll, and the employees' needs are not going to be met, right? It's a two-way street. It's a two-way communication street. And so it's really about, if, for example, in Pat's example, you have a manager that doesn't know how to manage. You as an employee being like, hey, this is actually not great management practices. Who can I reach out to in the organization that can help so that I can get the support that I need, right? And empowering yourself, because as an employee, you actually have a really good leverage right now because of the great resignation. People are trying to hold on to their employees as possible. So if you step up, if you say, obviously with a lot of respect and obviously taking into account the norms, right? You want to make sure that you step up and say, hey, like this is not okay. And that's how we are going to shape the workplace.
And I think what's so interesting about that is even before COVID, you know, women in the workplace, we had these invisible barriers, and it was hard for us to take up space and be visible in the workplace. And now that companies are being hybrid or doing remote first working, it's really almost this additional physical barrier that's happening for us. So, you know, in addition to communicating what you need and stuff like that, what are some other ways you can make your voice heard and advocate for yourself in the workplace while also making sure you're still achieving the career goals that you set out for yourself?
I can jump on that if you'd like me to. So one of the things we highly recommend is that you create a You Rock folder, a Go Girl folder, a Good Job folder. You can call it whatever you want, but you deserve to have a place where you should be gathering up those thank yous, those recommendations. And if someone says thank you, never hesitate to stop and say, hey, Cassie, by the way, I love what you said. I take it and receive it with gratitude. Thank you. But would you mind taking a minute and drop that on my LinkedIn profile so that someone else who needs a fireside chat expert may call us in and think about tapping for us to do that as well. So leveraging the thank yous, keeping track of the thank yous, and then also keeping track of your quantifiable wins. So we use a tracking tool, a value blueprint, and encourage people, write down the things you've done well, those wins, whether you can also add a time saving, a financial benefit. And if you were going for a job at Amazon, for example, I'd also have the 14 leadership principles of that company across the top, so that when you're interviewing, you can turn around and say, well, I've helped X, Y, and Z, and that's a time that I failed fast, if that's one of their attributes. You want to know what the company cares about, what you've done, how you've quantified it, and how it impacts them, the so what, who cares, because they're only going to care if you can connect the dots and share how it will now impact them and your new or future role. Hope that helps.
Definitely. Does anyone else have anything to add there?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. First off, in meetings, show up, have a voice, speak up. Don't let them forget that you're there. Because I think, I just talked to a woman today who is an acting director of a nonprofit. She's looking to go into the a C-level position. And she's like, I can't tell my story. And I think, as women, this falls more on women. It goes back to probably our childhoods. We're told to, be modest, be humble. And that's almost the exact opposite of what you have to do when you're out there in the workforce, and then you're worried that you're going to get called the B word or other things. You don't want to be labeled, but you really do have to show up. Make sure you have a voice in those meetings on those, make sure you're putting your ideas out there, like Pat said, but also documenting what your ideas were, your suggestions. Also share that to LinkedIn. I think a lot of people talk about optimizing your profile. I'm really big on, LinkedIn strategies when it comes to the job search process. But I think one of the things that people forget about, your profile is one piece. Put that information out. Put what you're doing out and how that's helping your industry. Show up as a subject matter expert, as a thought leader. Show up as that person out there on LinkedIn, so that if something does happen, or if you want to move, you're in control of that ship, not the other way around. There's evidence to who you are and what you do. And those would be my suggestions.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think it's working the room virtually, meaning that work on a plan to see how they're going to highlight all of your wins for the company, right? Don't go at it alone. Look for a sponsor. Look for really trying to help you get to where you want to go. And again, that's going to require a little bit of work. So for example, if you're not used to going out and talking to anyone, this is going to be hard. But the key is to just keep trying until you find someone that's really going to help you, really going to aid you in your career journey, because you can't just, do it by yourself. You can't just be the one tooting your own horn. Other people.
Right. It's so important to brag about yourself every
Mhm.
now and then.
And
We have an annual event called Galvanize, and we have a brag wall, or we just like carve out time where we just ask the attendees to just brag about themselves. It's so important.
yeah, and I would say that a lot of people, especially women, do not brag about themselves at all, and they're so scared of coming off as like braggadocious, too much. If you have never bragged about yourself, it is gonna be so hard for you to.
Yeah.
So, like, just try it, and it's gonna feel weird. You're gonna be like, why do people? But at the end of the day, like, just putting yourself out there until you find something that feels comfortable to you is
Yeah.
So, oh,
I would say anyone watching right now that wants to brag in the comments right now, feel free to.
yeah, tell us
We
why you
encourage
rock.
that.
That's how I call it, right? But here's a tip. Layering on what you just said, right? People don't want to brag, they feel awkward, or they brag too much and it's off-putting, right? There's not often this happy medium because women then worry about being conceived as bitchy or being perceived as aggressive, not just assertive. So we will maybe sometimes tend to hold back for fear of the impression. But one tip is to, again, when I talked about recommendations, I have 90, I think, on my LinkedIn profile. So it's very easy. I'll say, look, I could tell you all about what it feels like to work with me, but why don't you go and check out the recommendations? And I'll usually steer someone to one or two particular persons and what they said that I know will be in contact. So that's one. And then even in writing profiles, because I love that recommendation, Melanie, clients say, ... fill it in. Colleagues tell me, blah, blah, blah. Colleagues trust me because ... Let your words start with how others have complimented or thanked you, and then fill in the rest of the sentence with the truthful things that they've said. And for some reason, when we put it in those phrases, because you never want it to be an I thing anyway, right? Your profile shouldn't be that. Your cover letter should never be I. It's not about us. It's about them again. So colleagues say, clients say, trusted partners say, and then go ahead and brag away because it will not feel as icky or awkward because you're using other people's real words. That helps.
That's great. And it looks like we have a comment from one of our viewers saying it's just so hard to talk about our own accomplishments versus other accomplishments. Do you guys have any inspiration to provide there?
Honestly, just do it. And what Catalina said, to be honest, it's going to feel awkward. It's going to probably make your skin crawl if you're not used to doing it. Get comfortable with it. I was getting ready to do my website recently and I had to get my, recommendations. And so I was pulling them from LinkedIn and I was just rereading them, which ones I wanted on there and whatnot. And honestly, after I read them, I felt really good about myself. I was like, wow, I'm a really good career coach. And as much as that sounds like, oh, wow, big head over here, it made me feel good in that moment. And honestly, it's something now I'm like, if you have old recommendations, look back to them, read them out loud, say them out loud, make it a part of your kind of mindset as to how you approach it. And then ask people to give you feedback. Ask people to, hey, I'm trying to work on, what some of my strengths are. I'm trying to get ready, ask those closest to you to give you that feedback. Again, it's sometimes we don't necessarily love to, we want to be kind of in the shadows and hey, I'm a great worker. I can do all this, but let other people tell you. And just as Pat said earlier, just receive it in. And then post that up and have it in your, have it where you can see it almost on a daily basis until it starts to be a habit. And then it just becomes more natural.
There's also a thing called voice of customer or client or colleague. It's all the same, right? So how other people describe you. So another ninja tip could be to just take your mouse. If you've got recommendations, they could be on LinkedIn or anywhere else that your people show up because you know where your people are. Take your mouse and drag it over and grab it and drop it onto a Google document for now. And then put it in one of those free word cloud apps or tools online and drop it in and tell it to only give you the top 15 words and watch what happens. You'll see the same comments, like the word confidence and energy and positivity. Like I'll watch voice of customer, their words, not mine. And what it does is it also helps you if you're doing a website, when you're doing your profile, if you're doing a cover letter or a resume, use the words that resonate the way people just naturally speak about you, because we get stuck in our own heads sometimes. I almost think about, here's a funny one. Pretend it's a prom or a wedding moment, right? There's anybody, right? You've ever had the pedestal and the mirrors, right? You're with me? You need perspective because you can't see if your butt looks big in the dress or it just looks wrong or it looks great. So perspective is a valuable tool. And so you might as well, people have gone out of their way to thank you or compliment you. Go ahead, receive it, and literally watch their words and adapt their words into your vocabulary, because I bet you they are mirroring things you've said during your work with them. Probably does. And that's a good way to, again, get out of your own head or sound too maybe techie. I work with a lot of, CFOs and C-suite people, and they might sound too techie or too much like bean counters. They're not speaking kind of that general language. Get out of your own head. Let someone else's words tell the story for you.
Yeah, and I would just love to add, I love what y'all have said about like letting others tell the story. And I think kind of in the same vein, it's allowing past self to tell the story of, right? Sorry if you hear that in the background. My puppy is hungry and she's going. I'm like, I'm not sure how to stop her. But I think it's all about kind of like what Pat was saying, having a Google Doc, right? And then in quarantine, or if you're like, feel a little, every day the same, but every week just make sure to be like, what are the top 3 things that I did? Where do I want to, and then you kind of take ownership of how you're growing. Right? And then at the end of the month, you can say, wow, these are all the things that I did. In your next one-on-one, you can say, wow, these are all the things that I did. You can have a quarterly view. And that really helps, because if you're getting overlooked, but you want to have our receipts, right? Receipts are the most important, and you can generate your own receipts without having to ask others. And what you can do is, once you have your own receipts, you can go ask others and be like, hey, can we revisit this? What do you think? And then solicit feedback, specific feedback, so you can add to your receipts. And then you just have a bunch of things that you can take to your manager and be like, hey, here's what I thought, here's what my clients thought. Like, how can we actually get me more notice in my team, and how can I get that promotion?
Mm-hmm. So I think, just to kind of wrap up the conversation a little bit, I know we talked a little bit about obviously promoting ourselves and advocating for ourselves and being visible, but we also touched on, creating those boundaries, which is so important. There was such a huge uptick in a lack of boundaries when we started remote work, and uptick in burnout. So what are some actionable steps that people can take to really continue to advocate for themselves and be visible, but also not be too available, that there are no boundaries like we have been seeing?
So I say, it's really important to have a real conversation with yourself. Like, look at your week, right? And okay, if I'm going to be going to the office 3 times a week, or whatever it may be, what am I going to do at the office? Like, what time am I going to need? When am I going to need to arrive? When am I going to need to eat? On off days, am I have to be on? When do I have to be kind of flexible? Take a look. Construct a schedule for yourself, and again, talk to your manager and be like, hey, this is what works for me, right? Does that line up with what works with the team? Not what do I have to make a change on, so that we can actually work. Again, it's advocating for yourself, but taking the team into account, because you are not a one-person team, right? But it's really, really important that you have that conversation with yourself and be real with yourself. This is what my actual schedule looks like, what my actual needs look like. This is where I'm going to set my boundaries, right? So that you can start really advocating for yourself, and then you can ask somebody to advocate for you.
Yeah, and I would say start making these lists now. I think the one thing that job seekers end up, is always feeling like you're behind the 8 ball. And so you're always playing catch up. So start, even if it's a thought that maybe you might want to consider, looking for a new job, but start investing in yourself now. But that also goes even if you want to stay within your own company and want to be promoted. You know, you need to be prepared for that. What do you need to do? Like how, you know, what projects have you been involved in? I think that's the thing is like oftentimes we get overlooked for promotions because we're not, you know, we're not prepared to have those conversations. And these are things that you should always be building. Like, you know, Catalina said, kind of take a quarterly review of your own self, even if your companies don't do that. So start preparing this information now and really take account for where you're at and then have that information readily available so that you can promote yourself. You can talk to your, you know, your managers about, you know, that opportunity, or you might want to, you know, consider looking for other opportunities depending on where you're at in that place.
Absolutely. Oh, like a good scout, always be prepared. Don't wait because you can't dig the well when you're thirsty. Too late. You need to have, right? You can't plant the corn when you're hungry. You need to do those things and nurture yourself, your career, your life, and make sure that you're on track and reassess. So I do a lot of career soul searching. I have a tool, a career soul searching assessment, just to help people stop and reflect on what really matters so that they stay on task and know that they're working toward your non-negotiable priorities now in this chapter, because what you probably needed 5 years ago and what you will need 5 years from now are probably both quite different than today. And so it's your responsibility to stay on top of your non-negotiable priorities, your strengths, your transferable skills, and to articulate the value. The other thing I highly, highly recommend is we do a lot with accountability. And if you have some kind of tracker, I know in our programs it's included in our program, but if you can keep accountable, you're able to show your productivity, your stick-to-itiveness, the things that they may not even realize they should be asking you for, but you can proactively provide some tools and resources to show that you are on top of things, that you're continuing to stay aligned with what the team and the company values. You're not just off on your own silly tangents, because out of sight should never, ever equal out of mind. So I'm doing actually a 5-day challenge next week. It's free. It's rockonsuccess.com/soon, SOON. And we're going to show people how to use accountability and how to polish up their story, evaluate what they want. So kind of all the things we just talked about, but a quick little jump start, because a lot of people said, oh, the summer, I took the summer off. I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to put sand in my toes and roll around on the floor with my kids, which is great. But I want you to wake up Labor Day morning, and then the kids, if you have them, go back to school if they haven't already. And you deserve to be prepared, as Melanie said, always be prepared. So hopefully, I appreciate all of you, and thank you for including me. This was an awesome group, but hope that helped everybody. God bless. I appreciate you.
Definitely. Well, someone who's going to be working remote indefinitely, I definitely appreciate all the advice and wisdom you all shared today. And it looks like from the comments, a lot of positive feedback that all of our followers did as well. Is there any final words of wisdom any of you want to share before we sign off here?
I always just say, continue to believe in yourself and what you have to offer. Don't ever underestimate yourself and your value that you bring to the table. So,
Yeah, I would say also, you know, just take risks. If the pandemic showed us anything, you know, things can change like that. So why not take the risk on yourself, and then see what happens?
And I believe that instead of letting things overwhelm you, kind of chunk your time into maybe what do I want a year from now, and then break it down into quarters. 90-day plans, 90-day leaps are awesome, because at the end of the day, you deserve to rock your career and your life without selling your soul or losing your mind. And we all deserve that. Hope this helped everyone today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being VIPs for our community. If anyone watching wants to continue the conversation, you can head to Fairygodboss, where you can ask any and all career questions. You can ask them as yourself or anonymously, and you can get advice from peers or career experts like we have here today. So thank you so much for joining, and we hope you all tune in next time. Bye.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.